Hey, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Hart for those of you that are new, and today I'll be breaking down these Sunday main slates here for DraftKings. This is the final look. I'll be going through my core plays, games to target, value plays and pivots, and favorite stacks for the slate. So make sure to hit that like button and subscribe, and let's get right into this breakdown. So before I do that, just want to get a quick look at the games to target here, kind of the game totals, the spreads of who we should kind of be first initially looking to build a lot of this around in terms of game script. So first game we have is the Chargers-Giants. It's going to be a super popular one, especially for the running back on the Chargers, Amarian Hampton. But it's a 6-point spread, 43.5 game total. Jackson Dart is the Giants quarterback for at least the rest of the season. So that'll be interesting there. We'll talk about that in a minute. Lots to like there in that game. Browns versus the Lions, 10-point spread. So obviously there's blowout risk, 44.5. But they are playing in the Detroit Dome. So I have a good amount of interest in this as like a really, really solid contrarian stack that you guys could get to. Obviously, a good amount of pieces we can get to as well that have a good amount of upside. Saints Bills, another one of those games. Really like stacking it. Going to be chalky just because there's a lot of good pieces to target. The spread has come down a little bit. I know for a while it was 15.5, then it went up to 16.5, I believe, and now it's down to 14.5. 48.5 game total. That's why it's super appealing. Obviously, the blowout risk is there, but it's really hard to deny that game total. But obviously, there's a little bit of question marks in terms of the Bills' offensive side, in terms of the wide receivers you want to target. I'll break through that. Eagles, Bucks, another one of those games, kind of like the Lions and Browns, where obviously it's not going to be a blowout, at least according to the spread. Okay game total, nothing crazy there. It's just there's a lot to like on both sides in terms of guys we can get to. Commanders, Falcons, one of those games is kind of going unrecognized, 1.5 point spread, 43.5 game total. Don't love it, but we could go through that. Titans, Texans, another one of those games no one's really talking about. Really low game total, 39.5, 7-point spread. Another one of those games. Don't think there's a need to get to that. Panthers, Patriots, 5.5 point spread, 43.5 game total. This one is kind of getting steamed up a little bit in terms of at least Drake May of a piece to get to. Colts, Rams, another one of those games. A lot of interest in 3.5 point spread, 49.5 game total there. And to finish off the slate here with the last three, Jags, 49ers, 3.5 point spread, 46.5. Bears, Raiders, 1.5 point spread, 47.5. Going to be super popular. And Ravens, Chiefs, 2.5 point spread, 40.5 games total. So another one of those high scoring games. So there's a lot to like on the slate. In terms of injuries, let's quickly break that down. Jaden Daniels for the Washington Commanders is going to be out once again. So it's going to be Marcus Mariota, 5,000. I think he's okay. I don't think there's really a need to get to him. The Falcons defense has actually been decently solid. Obviously they blew out the Raiders there in that last game. Marcus Mariota had a really solid game there, 21.5 fantasy points, ran for 40 yards, had a touchdown, but also had a fumble. So, I mean, sure, if you're building a ton of lineups, you can definitely get to Marcus Mariota in some, but if you're building 20 or less, I don't think there's a need to force him into your lineups. The big news for that game as well, Bill might be out. If that's the case, McNichols and Rodriguez are going to split the workload there. And I wouldn't be surprised if they mix in some Chase Edmonds as well. I think McNichols will be that more so first down, second down back. Can get involved a little bit in the receiving side, but I think they'll just leave that to Rodriguez as well. So if you're looking for some punt running back plays, you can get to them. I don't think there's a need. And then in terms of wide receivers and tight ends, McLaurin is out, so Debo, Luke McCaffrey, and Jalen Lane will kind of fill in there. They're cheap. Once again, I just don't think there's a need to really get to this game. And I'll mention Zach Ertz as well. But yeah, that's kind of the injury news there. Baker Mayfield should be good to go. Mac Jones is questionable, but Brock Purdy is back. So that's really it. It's nothing crazy in terms of the quarterbacks. And as I said, Russell Wilson got benched. So it will be the Jackson Dart show, and he is 4,500. Obviously, he has rushing upside. It will be interesting to see kind of how he handles. It's not the best game to kind of start going against the Chargers, who have been really, really good. Herbert looks like an MVP candidate. The defense has been playing really well. So not the best game environment for him to kind of start off in his first career start, 4,500, but still cheap price tag. He has people you can stack with him, and a lot of people you can bring back on the other side in terms of the Chargers. So I do have interest there, and he's one of those guys who can rush the ball. So cheap dart throw quarterback play there that should get a little bit of ownership. I'm interested in him. That's really it for the quarterbacks. Running back situation, Hubbard is questionable. He should be good to go, but for some reason he's out. Rico Dotto will be a really good value play if you want to get down to him. Swift is questionable, but he should be good to go. For some reason, if he's out, Cobb and On Guy will be another really solid value play, but I do like Swift that price tag. I already mentioned Bill. Tyrone Tracy's out, so obviously, where is he? Cam Scatterboo will be kind of be the main running back, but they will mix in some Devin Singletary. So I don't think Scatterboo is like as good as a play as a lot of people have steamed him up to be. And then obviously Najee Harris is out for the season, so Amarian Hampton will be taking over the huge workload for the Chargers running back room. In terms of the wide receiver situation, Mike Evans is out. So in terms of them, let's get to them real quick. Ibuka will be wide receiver 1, but they also have Chris Godwin Jr. coming back. It will be interesting to see how many snaps he play. Will he play the whole game? Will he be limited? I would expect some sort of limitation there. And if that's the case, at his price tag $6,000, I wouldn't get to him. I would still have a good amount of interest in Ibuka at 6.8K. A lot of people are overlooking him. He's not really high owned for a team that does like to throw the ball, being a number one option, 6.8K. Godwin back will help him out, just because they can't just all focus on Ibuka and make guys like Shepard and Johnson, Tez Johnson, kind of beat them. Godwin will be there to kind of ease the load a little bit there for the rookie Ibuka. But yeah, I mean, you could take a shot on a guy like Sterling Shepard, who's been involved. Baker's looked at him. I expect Tez Johnson and Ryan Miller to get involved. I don't think you need to take a dart throw on them at all. And then I will mention, I like Cade Otton, as we saw from last year when one of the main guys is out for the Bucks. Cade Otton has had those games where he can go for 15, 20 plus. Like Baker does like throwing him the ball. So he's definitely a tight end punt play that I do really like. In terms of other wide receivers, Devontae Adams is questionable. They've been floating. Maybe he gets eliminated a little bit. So hopefully we get some more news by tomorrow morning for that, because he's one of my favorite wide receiver plays. Obviously, he's going to be very popular just because it's a very concentrated target share for that team in the offense there in the passing game. It's Buka and it's Devontae, and they're both getting like 10, if not more, targets a game. So a lot to like for that price tag. Tat, questionable, but he should be good to go. Ricky Pearsall and Jawan Jennings are kind of the only other two, big question marks in terms of the wide receivers on the slate. I think Ricky's more so questionable than Jawan. Jawan's been able to practice the past 2 days, but once again, we have to keep an eye out on that, because if one of them's out, going to want to get to the one that is playing. If both of them are in, I think I slightly prefer Jennings, but they're both really cheap priced in this game against Jacksonville there. And that's really it. Pierce is out, so I will mention, where is he? Adonai Mitchell here at 3.1K. One of those guys, kind of like a deep ball threat. He could get involved. What to see? I'd prefer getting into Josh Downs there, who's been involved already. And it's just more upside, a little bit of a safer play. But that is that. And that's really it for the wide receiver situation. Yeah, that is it. And then moving on to tight ends. As you can see, really no interesting news here. Quickly, if he is good to go and he's back, I mean, he's a full practice participant on Friday, I'd have a lot of interest in him if there is no limitations. Now, if there's a limitation, I wouldn't love it, but that is huge news there, because he is a guy who has a lot of upside and they really, really like, has good involvement as well. So that's big news there. Loveland is questionable if he's out. I do think Cole Kmet is viable as a really cheap tight end. Disley's out, so I will mention, what's his name, Gadsden. Really good game there for the Chargers. 7 targets, 5 catches. Harbaugh was talking him up, so he's another one of those kind of cheap dart throw tight ends you guys could get to. So now with all that injury news, the games to target, let's go over kind of the chalky plays. Let me know if you guys like this concept as well. Kind of switching it up from just the kind of final core play breakdown, talking through all the players. I think I like this. I prefer this method a little bit more. But yeah, in terms of like the chalky players, it's either going to be spending up for Josh Allen, going to Justin Herbert at 6,300 in that game against the Giants, or people are going to go down to Caleb Williams, Drake May, Geno Smith. I think that's where most of the ownership is going to go to. It's going to go to the kind of the cheaper guys, Geno Smith, Caleb Williams, or paying up to a guy like Justin Herbert, 6,300. I think the ownership is going to be a little bit more spread out than it was last week, just because of the range of options we have. Everyone's kind of cheap here in terms of quarterback plays. In the top plays, obviously there's some blowout risks, some good defenses. So I don't really think there's going to be like 2 or 3 really high owned quarterbacks. As I mentioned, I think most people are going to go in that bottom tier, Geno Smith, Caleb Williams, or they're going to go to the mid tier of Justin Herbert. And obviously I do expect, obviously Hurts, Jackson and Allen to get some good ownership as well. I think it's still right now my favorite play would be Josh Allen just because of the matchup and his upside there. And it's one of those things. I think I saw a statistic that I think in all the games that Josh Allen goes for like 30 plus, I think there's only been like 2 times that he's brought like a wide receiver with him in terms of like someone that you needed to pair with him, which I guess essentially boils down to when Josh Allen has a really good game, like a really top tier, like 1% game for him, like 30 plus. Usually it's because he gets multiple rushing touchdowns and rushing yards. So for that reason, obviously in a blowout, I do really like Josh Allen as kind of my favorite core play for quarterback for the running back situation here. Christian McCaffrey going to be coming in at probably 30, 35, maybe even close to 40% owned. Obviously, just a main workhorse for them. He's been super, super involved in the receiving game, as you can see. 10 targets week 1, 7 week 2, 15 in week 3. Once again, I expect him to go for 10 plus targets. He obviously has the rushing upside. Hasn't been the best in terms of the rushing game there. As you can see, no rushing touchdowns yet. Hasn't really been super efficient. But once again, just that involvement in the passing game, they're going to be the main target. Really, really like him once again. And we'll get into kind of the stack there. But yeah, he'll be super popular. I think Barkley stands out as a great contrarian play there as a top spend up. Moving on down a little bit more, Derrick Henry, Ashton Genty are my 2 favorite plays in terms of guys that going to be probably close to 5% owned, maybe even less, and they both have really good upside. Obviously, both of them been kind of crapped on media. Obviously, Derrick Henry coming off of some pretty bad games there, pretty bad fumbles, not going to be talked about. Going up against a really, really tough defense. He's one of those guys who's obviously game script dependent. If they are down, he's going to get phased out. But one of those things, as we know with Derrick Henry, has the ability to go for 150 and 3 touchdowns in any single game, any single matchup. And if he's coming in at 5% owned, one of those guys I really do think you should target if you're making multiple lineups. With Genty, obviously it's still unknown. He's a rookie, but one of those things, it's a good right spot against the Bears. The Bears defense is absolutely awful. So I do think you want some good amount of Raiders pieces. And I could see Genty having a really solid kind of breakout game here at 6,200. Moving on down a little bit more. Obviously, one of the chalkiest running backs in the slate is going to be Amarian Hampton, 5,900. Absolutely love the workload. Absolutely love the matchup here. I think you eat the chalk. If you want to get different, obviously you go to Ladd McConkey, or other running backs if we're kind of sticking in the running back range or realm. But yeah, Amarian Hampton, 5,900 looks really, really good there. I think you just eat the chalk. Going on down a little bit more, as I mentioned, Cam Scadaboo will be popular. It'll be interesting to see kind of how they utilize him with Jackson Dart. I don't know if his upside is going to be 8 targets in terms of the pass catching ability, especially with Jackson Dart there, a guy who can run, so maybe he doesn't look to dump it off as much. But, I mean, one of those guys who should see at least 60% of the snaps. As I mentioned, they will mix in some Devin Singletary. So I'm not as high on him right now in this spot until we kind of get some more clarity on how this offense is going to work with Jackson Dart. But I think he's a fine option. And then people are getting into Travian Henderson just because of Gibson and Ramondre being really bad in terms of fumbling. So I know people are taking dart throws on that. I don't think there's a need to get to him there. Yeah, it's really just kind of the McCaffrey and Hampton show in terms of the top 2 running back plays. And then, as I mentioned, kind of some other guys I really like getting to for this slate tomorrow, especially some contrarian options. And I forgot to mention James Cook. Really like him there at 7,100, especially pairing him with Josh Allen, as I mentioned. I don't love the upside or just the floor of Josh Allen's wide receivers. You never know if it's going to be Shakir, Palmer, even Kincaid. If I had to pick one, it'd probably be Kincaid being like the safest bet for me in terms of just, pairing him with Josh Allen. Otherwise, as I mentioned in my past videos, I think James Cook's just a super safe play. Obviously, it's game script dependent. Like if they go up, James Cook's going to be limited just because they're going to go to guys like Ty Montgomery, the 2 backup running backs. So there's that issue. He's kind of been slightly touchdown dependent, but I mean, that's been him his whole career. Like he just finds the end zone. So I think that's my favorite stack there for the Bills. Now moving on to the wide receiver situation, Puka, him and JSN are just in a league of their own in terms of just usage and targets. I mean, if you guys follow, all the fantasy data kind of analysis and data geeks on Twitter, Puka and JSN are in a league of their own. There's no one even close in terms of just utilization and just upside in terms of the passing game right now. So going to be super popular, but for good reason. Absolute great matchup there against Indiana. Moving on down a little bit more, Neighbors, I think he's really viable. Should have a huge bounce back game here with Jackson Dart throwing the ball. Ibuka, as I mentioned, no one's going to him right now. Very low owned. Should be the number one option there in that game against Philly. Zay Flowers, another one of those guys. Huge letdown game there. Was super popular in the showdown slates. He's been good the first 2 weeks. Letdown spot going against a good defense, especially a good cornerback, Trent McDuffie. But I really like him there as another kind of contrarian play. Absolutely love Ladd. He's getting steamed up a little bit, but in terms of just all the stats, in terms of like breakout candidates, Ladd's one of the best in terms of wide receivers, in terms of having a huge game here soon. So hasn't flashed it. Quentin Johnson and Keenan Allen have stolen the show through the first 3 weeks so far, but really, really like Ladd there at 6,500. I don't mind eating the chalk here in these first 4 guys because, as I said, you can get really different in terms of other options, as I mentioned already in this video, and I'll mention soon. In terms of other guys here, as I'll quickly call out, I like A.J. Brown once again and those Eagles wide receivers. Roman Dunze looks good for the Bears. That'll be a very popular stack. Devontae Adams, another one of those wide receivers I really like. As I mentioned, there's a question mark in terms of his role. If he's going to play, if he does, will he be limited? If he's not, love that price tag, 6,200. Moving on down a little bit more. Tat looks great in this matchup against New England. Xavier Worthy, if he is back, love taking a shot on him. Or Tyquan Thornton, the cheaper kind of boomer bust play for the Chiefs, especially if you're going like a Ravens or Chiefs stack. Drake London, another one of those guys, should be really involved. I expect 10-plus targets in this matchup for him. Good bounce back candidate. And I did mention the receivers for the 49ers, Ricky Pearsall, Juwan Jennings, both really cheap, and a good matchup there and just all the upside. Quentin Johnson, I'll mention him. Keenan Allen, as I said, both solid options there. And I'll mention Jacoby Myers for the Raiders. Another one of those guys going to good amount of ownership because the Bears defense is just terrible. Them and the Raiders are 2 teams you want to target. That's why the Raiders and the Bears and all those pieces are going to be super popular just because of that game script and just upside there. And as I mentioned, Olave, it just makes sense to bring him back there. But if you want to get off chalk there, you can go down to Juwan Johnson as a tight end for the Saints, or Rashid Shaheed. Both have similar upside. They're just not seeing as many targets, but they're still seeing a good amount there. So that is the wide receiver situation. And I will mention one more player. Chris Kirk came back, saw 8 targets. So he should get a lot of involvement there from C.J. Stroud. 4.4K, really, really cheap. Moving on to the tight end situation here. Brock Bowers just hasn't looked himself since that injury. Once again, it's a smash spot against the Bears. It was just one of those things like, do you think he will, one more week, will he be a little bit better? Will he get back to his normal self? I think so. Really like him there at 5.8. Moving on down a little bit more. Dalton Kincaid, as I mentioned, if you're playing Josh Allen, looks like a good target. Really like Sam Laporta here as like a contrarian option, 4.4K. Got a little bit of involvement there. Hasn't been the best in terms of targets, but they've been blowing out teams. So they haven't gone to much, but it's a good matchup against the Browns. That's really it. In terms of tight ends, I already kind of mentioned a few. Njoku, another one of those players you can run it back with if you're going to that game. But yeah, this is kind of the core plays. I know it's super chalky, but as I mentioned, a lot of different options you can get to in terms of building out the rest of the lineup here. But in terms of kind of, stacks you guys can get to. One of the first stacks I like, Herbert, Ladd, Quentin Johnston. And obviously you can bring it back with either Malik Neighbors or you can bring it back with Wan'Dale Robinson. That looks like a good stack there. Moving on to the next stack. We have Brock Purdy, CMC, Juwan Jennings, or Ricky Pearsall, or all 4 of them you can definitely do. And a bring back, I like a contrarian bring back, could be Travis Etienne. He's just the safest in terms of his just usage and workload. It's hard to trust Travis Hunter or Brian Thomas Jr., but you can definitely get them. I prefer Brian Thomas Jr. if you want to bring back there. But that's another game stack I really like. Brock Purdy, CMC, Juwan Jennings. You can do a bring back. You don't even have to do one if you don't want to. Another kind of build I like here is going to be Lamar Jackson. Getting different, pairing him with Derrick Henry, but going to Zay Flowers as well. Now, I will mention, as I said, if Likely is back, no limitations. Really, really like him there at 3.3K. You can take out Zay Flowers, go to Likely. You can take out Henry, but I like bringing it back with Xavier Worthy, kind of the safest option in terms of the wide receivers for the Kansas City Chiefs if there's no limitations. Another game stack I do like is going to be Jalen Hurts there, pairing with Saquon Barkley. As I mentioned, I really expect a huge bounce back game here for Saquon. A guy who's been under the radar, hasn't had like a huge game yet. So he's kind of been flying under the radar. And then pairing that with A.J. Brown. And then you can bring him back either Ibuka, as I mentioned, or you can go cheaper with like a pump play as Cade Otton. Going on down a little bit more, as I mentioned, huge blowout risk here. But the Lions playing at home in that dome, they've been very, very good, put up a ton of points. So I really like targeting this game. As we know with the Browns players, Njoku, even Fannin Jr., but Jerry Jeudy, one of those guys, it's pretty boom or bust. And if they keep this game close, which it doesn't look like they can this year, Joe Flacco's just been very, very bad and slow. Hasn't really been able to push the ball downfield, but still, if they can miraculously keep this game within a touchdown or two, it could be a shootout. Goff, Brown, Laporta, really like that matchup there, and a bring back with Jerry Jeudy. And the last one I have for you guys is going to be Jackson Dart there, taking a shot on him, super cheap. Pairing him with Malik Neighbors, Wan'Dale Robinson. Both players have been really solid. Both have really good upside. And then pairing them with the bring back of Ladd McConkey. As I mentioned, a lot of ways you can go. These are kind of my favorite options. Hope you guys like the video. Let me know if you like this kind of breakdown a little bit more. Should hopefully get this a little bit quicker, a little bit faster, so it's not as long of a video going into the following weeks. But still, I expect this to be around like a 12 to 15 minute final breakdown for the remainder of the season. So I hope you guys liked the video. Hit the like button and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.